"What are you doing here? You weren't invited. You shouldn't be here." My future daughter-in-law's voice shook, echoing through the church before 300 guests. I smiled calmly, my fingers brushing the pearls at my neck. "Oh, my dear daughter-in-law, did you really think I wouldn't show up?" A cold smile spread across my lips. "I came to bring a special guest, someone very eager to see you." And when Jessica saw the man standing behind me, her face drained of all color. "My name is Susan Harris. I'm 67 years old, and up until 6 months ago, I thought my biggest worry in life was choosing the perfect dress for my only son's wedding. I was wrong. It all began when Daniel first brought Jessica home for dinner. I can still picture her that evening. Golden hair cascading in loose waves over her shoulders, wide doe-like eyes brimming with innocence, and a smile that could melt the coldest heart. I understood instantly what had captured my son. Daniel, who had been so quiet after his father passed away 3 years earlier, was glowing with happiness at her side. "Mom, this is Jessica," he said with pride. "She's a pediatric nurse." Jessica reached out her hand gently. "So nice to finally meet you, Mrs. Harris. Daniel has told me so much about you." Her voice was sweet, lilting like a melody. There was something about Jessica that reminded me of television actresses, maybe too perfect, too polished. But I brushed the thought aside, assuming I was just being suspicious. Over dinner, Jessica told stories about caring for sick children, volunteering at an animal shelter on weekends, and her dream of having a big family. With every story, I saw Daniel look at her as if he were watching the sunrise. I couldn't blame him. Jessica seemed flawless. "Unfortunately, my family doesn't accept our relationship," she confessed when dessert arrived, her eyes downcast, a tear sliding down her cheek. "They want me to marry someone more suitable." Daniel squeezed her hand. "We don't need them, sweetheart." My heart ached for her. A young woman abandoned by her own family simply for following her heart. As a mother, I couldn't imagine turning my back on my child for money. The weeks flew by in a blur. Before I knew it, a ring sparkled on Jessica's finger and wedding plans were underway. The engagement happened so quickly. "When you know, there's no reason to wait," Daniel repeated like a mantra. Jessica wanted a fairy tale wedding. A grand venue, a designer gown, imported flowers. And I, touched by her story and wanting my son happy, offered to pay for everything. "You'd really do that for me?" Jessica asked, her eyes glistening with gratitude. "You're the mother I never had." She hugged me, her slender frame trembling. In that moment, I opened not just my heart, but also my bank account to her. The months that followed were a whirlwind of preparations. I pulled out the deed to my house, cashed in my late husband's life insurance, and even took a loan against my home to give Jessica her dream wedding. The venue was set at Rosewood Estate, with its sprawling gardens and classic architecture, $15,000 just for the deposit. The Vera Wang gown cost $12,000 and had to be altered 3 times because Jessica insisted it be perfect. 2,000 imported white roses from Ecuador were ordered for the arrangements. Each time I signed a check, Jessica hugged me tighter, called me Mom, and promised me beautiful grandchildren. I thought I was living every mother's dream. But then, little details began to trouble me. Jessica always paid in cash, saying she wasn't used to credit cards. Her childhood stories changed depending on who she told them to. Sometimes she claimed she grew up on a farm in Iowa. Other times she said she was raised by grandparents in Arizona. "Don't you think it's odd we've never seen a single prize? A photo of her family?" I asked Daniel one evening. "She doesn't have a single relative or childhood friend on the guest list." "Mom, we've talked about this," Daniel snapped. Her family disowned her completely. It's a deep wound for her. I swallowed my doubts. My son hadn't been this happy in years. If the cost of that happiness was a few $1,000s and some unanswered questions, maybe it was worth it. But 3 weeks before the wedding, everything changed. That day I went to Daniel's apartment to drop off a keepsake gift. Using the spare key, I slipped inside quietly, hoping to surprise him, and that's when I heard Jessica's voice from the bedroom. Not the sweet sing-song voice I knew, but cold, calculating, businesslike. "Mark, I told you not to call this number. No, the wedding is still on schedule." "Yes, once I'm married I'll have access to their accounts." I froze in the hallway. "Why do you want a bigger cut?" "We agreed on 30%. There was a pause. "Listen, the old woman already gave us over 40,000, and after the wedding there'll be more money for a house. That fool is worth at least 200,000, maybe more. Her son suspects nothing. He's completely hooked. That old woman was me, and Daniel, my son, was the fool." My stomach churned, and I had to lean against the wall to keep from collapsing. Clutching the gift box, I backed away and slipped out unnoticed. After driving a few blocks, I pulled over, letting the shock consume me. Tears blurred my vision as I pounded the steering wheel, feeling like the biggest fool alive. How had I not seen it sooner? The conflicting stories, the cash, the missing family, Daniel drifting from old friends. It was all part of a carefully laid plan. In my pain, something else rose inside me. A strength, a determination I hadn't felt since the days I fought alongside my husband through his cancer. If Jessica thought she could destroy my son and strip us of everything, she had chosen the wrong family. That night, I dried my tears and did something I never thought I would. I searched my phone for a private investigator in Dallas. It was time to find out who this woman really was. The next morning, I met Patricia Miller at a small coffee shop downtown. The place was quiet, just a couple of tourists, and an old man with a newspaper perfect for a discreet conversation. Patricia was a retired cop turned private investigator, around 55, with short salt and pepper hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see through people. She wore a plain blazer and carried a worn leather briefcase. "Mrs. Harris," she said after listening to my story, sipping her black coffee. "What you're describing sounds exactly like a classic romance scam, only wrapped in a marriage scheme. These people are pros. They study their targets, figure out what they want to hear, and shape themselves into that ideal." A chill ran down my spine. Having someone else confirm my suspicions made it all too real. "How long will it take?" I asked, sliding a signed check across the table. Patricia smirked faintly and tucked it away. "With someone foolish enough to use her real voice on phone calls, not long." The next days were agonizing. Each time Jessica showed up with new demands for the wedding. "Mrs. Harris, would you mind adding one more table? Just a few hundred more." I forced myself to smile, pretending nothing had changed. Every hug, every mom, from her lips, filled me with disgust. The hardest part was watching Daniel, completely duped, enthusiastically building a future with a ghost. He talked about the house they'd buy, the children they'd have. Seeing him so full of hope for a future built on lies shattered me. 2 weeks later, Patricia called. "Susan, you'd better sit down for this," her voice heavy. I gripped the kitchen counter. "Jessica doesn't exist," Patricia continued. "The woman your son is about to marry is actually Sophia Collins, 29 years old, from Houston. In the last 5 years, she's been arrested 3 times for fraud, though convicted only once." The tea kettle screamed. a sound piercing from another world. I couldn't even move to turn off the stove. She works with partners, usually men, who help gather information on targets, sometimes posing as relatives to build credibility, Patricia went on. The man on the phone, Mark Rivera, is her most frequent accomplice. They were romantically involved once, until 2 years ago when she conned him out of a large sum and disappeared. He's been hunting her ever since. Finally, I turned off the stove, my hands moving automatically while my mind reeled. "How did you discover all this?" I whispered. "Facial recognition software and some old-school detective work," Patricia replied. "Sophia has been posing as Jessica for 8 months, using a fake social security number and fabricated job history. Her pediatric nurse work was just a few volunteer shifts at a free clinic, enough to look legitimate if anyone checked." I sank into a kitchen chair, struggling to absorb it all. "And worse, Susan," Patricia added, "she's pulled this before at least 3 times that I can trace. She targets single men with good jobs, preferably those grieving a loss, like the death of a parent or spouse. Men emotionally vulnerable, like my son Daniel, still mourning his father. She swoops in, stages a lavish wedding paid for by the family, gains access to bank accounts, and vanishes months later with everything she can carry." I closed my eyes, picturing what would have happened if I hadn't overheard that call. My son would be left in ruins, emotionally and financially. The house gone, a lifetime of savings wiped away. "Patricia," I finally said, my voice stronger than I felt, "I need you to find Mark Rivera." There was a pause. "Susan, what are you planning?" "I think a man who's been chasing Sophia for 2 years might be very interested in attending this wedding." I could almost hear Patricia's surprise. "You're planning to bring him to the ceremony?" "I want Jessica, or rather, Sophia, to get exactly what she deserves," I answered. "Can you find him?" "I already have," Patricia replied firmly. "He's in Houston now, working construction. I'll send you his contact information within the hour." After hanging up, I sat in the kitchen for a long time, tea cold in its cup. Part of me wanted to run straight to Daniel and tell him everything. But I knew my son, stubborn like his father and Sophia, had been whispering in his ear for months. She had probably convinced him that any criticism of her was just jealousy or control. No, I needed something undeniable, public, impossible to refute or twist. The wedding was 10 days away, and I would make sure it became unforgettable, but not in the way Sophia imagined. I took out my grandmother's pearl necklace, passed down through 4 generations, the very piece I had once offered for Jessica to wear on her wedding day. I remembered the way her eyes had lit up, not with emotion, I realize now, but with calculation, already measuring how much it could sell for. "You have no idea who you're dealing with," I whispered to the pearls, as if speaking to Sophia herself. A cold calm washed over me as the plan took shape. The wedding of the century was about to become the scandal of the century. That afternoon, my hands trembling slightly, I dialed the number Patricia had given me. 3 rings, then a rough, guarded man's voice. Mark Rivera speaking. I drew a deep breath. "Mr. Rivera, my name is Susan. I think you know my son's bride, though you knew her as Sophia, not Jessica." The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. I could still hear the pounding of hammers and the shouts from a job site behind him. "Where is she?" His tone shifted, tense, urgent. "She's marrying my son in Dallas, in 9 days." I kept my voice steady. "She's already taken more than 40,000 from us, and this is just the beginning. I think we might be able to help each other." A long pause. I could almost feel his suspicion crackling through the line. "Ma'am, I don't know what game you're playing," he began. "No game, Mr. Rivera. I heard her speaking with you myself. She called you Mark and said that the fool my son was worth at least $200,000. She planned to drain him after the wedding and disappear within 6 months." His breath grew sharp, ragged. "You heard her talking to me?" "Yes, that was me. We had a deal, until she conned me. So you understand where I stand. Mrs. Harris, what exactly are you proposing?" I laid out the plan in detail. Mark would appear at the wedding, at just the right moment, and expose Sophia in front of every guest, including my son. A public humiliation, undeniable and final. "You want me to ruin the wedding?" There was something almost like admiration in his voice. "I want you to unmask her before everyone she's deceived, in front of my son, who deserves the truth before his life is destroyed." Mark stayed silent for several minutes. When he spoke again, his voice was different, harder. "She conned me out of $15,000 and vanished in the night, left me with the hotel bill and a rented car. I've been hunting her for 2 years. This is my chance. And what do you get out of this besides saving my son?" I smiled faintly, though he couldn't see it. "Justice, Mr. Rivera. A pure kind of justice." We spoke for 20 more minutes, refining every detail. Mark would drive to Dallas the morning of the wedding and wait in his car until I sent the signal. I would slip in through the garden path I knew by heart from visiting the estate and take a position where I could watch everything unfold. When I hung up, I realized I felt lighter than I had in weeks. The helpless anger had drained away, replaced by purpose. The next days spun by in preparation. I canceled my hair and dress appointments. If I was planning a scene straight out of a movie, I didn't need a polished hairstyle or a brand new gown. 3 days before the wedding, I began phase 2. I called every vendor, the event coordinator at Rosewood Estate, the florist, the caterer, the photographer, the DJ. "Miss Laura, this is Susan, the groom's mother for Saturday's wedding," I said with cheerful warmth. "Oh, Mrs. Harris, so nice to hear from you. You must be excited for the big day." "I am. I just wanted to let you know about a change in payment arrangements. The bride's family has decided to cover the remainder in full." "Isn't it wonderful when both families come together?" "How lovely. So I'll collect payment directly from them?" "Exactly. From now on, they'll handle everything. In fact, please hold off on charging my account until they reach out directly." I gave her a number Patricia had confirmed Sophia was using. They're very particular about financial matters. I repeated those instructions to each vendor. None of them doubted me after all. I was the reliable Mrs. Harris who had already paid the hefty deposits. On the morning of the wedding, when final payments were due, the vendors would call a phantom family, a number that would never answer. But my real masterpiece was the call to Daniel later that night. I could feel him slipping further from me. No doubt Sophia had sown seeds of doubt about my intentions. "Mom, I'm really busy. Jessica's upset you didn't come to the rehearsal dinner." "The dinner I wasn't even invited to," I thought bitterly. Out loud, I softened my tone. "Oh, Daniel, I completely understand Jessica's feelings," I said with sympathy. "Actually, I've been thinking, maybe I was too pushy about the wedding plans. This is Jessica's day, and if my presence feels like pressure, then of course I have to respect that." I paused. "I love you too much to risk doing anything that could ruin your happiness." His voice cracked. "Are you sure? Maybe Jessica would change her mind if you talked to her." "No need, sweetheart. I'm planning a little weekend trip, maybe down to New Orleans, pick up some antiques. I'll give you two the space to enjoy your big day without family drama." The relief in his voice cut through me like a knife. "That's really thoughtful, Mom. I just want you happy. That's all I've ever wanted." After I hung up, I sat staring at the phone, tears sliding silently down my face. That conversation was necessary, but it hurt more than I expected. Daniel truly believed I was the problem, that my worries came from jealousy or control, not from a mother's instinct. Friday night, the eve of the wedding, Sophia called me directly. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "Mrs. Harris, it's Jessica." Her voice was honey-sweet, with a practiced fragility. "I just wanted to thank you for being so understanding about tomorrow." "Think nothing of it, dear. I completely understand." I mimicked her tone. "A bride should feel perfectly comfortable on her wedding day." "That's so kind." "Daniel said you'll be in New Orleans this weekend?" A clumsy probe. "Yes, a short trip for the groom's mother, while you two begin your honeymoon." "Well then, enjoy yourself. And Mrs. Harris, once Daniel and I are settled, maybe we could have lunch together. I'd really love for us to be friends." The audacity was astounding. I had to hold the phone away to steady my breathing. "That sounds wonderful, Jessica. I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about." Hanging up, I poured a full glass of red wine, raised it to the window, and clinked it against my own reflection. "A toast to family, friends," I said aloud. "May they get exactly what they deserve." The final confrontation. The morning dawned gray, drizzle falling. The kind of weather a photographer calls romantic, but a bride calls disaster. A perfect omen for what was about to happen. I woke at 5 a.m., too tense to sleep. I took a long shower, letting the hot water ease the weight on my shoulders. I put on light makeup, just enough to look presentable. I slipped into a simple black dress, elegant, discreet. And of course, I clasped my own pearl necklace, the heirloom passed down through 4 generations, the same piece Sophia as Jessica had once eyed with greedy hunger. At 9 sharp, Mark Rivera called from a gas station 20 minutes outside Dallas. "I'm here, Mrs. Harris. Are you sure about this?" I glanced at the mirror one last time. I've never been more sure. What if your son doesn't forgive you? The question I'd avoided for days. Then at least I'll have saved him from a woman who would have destroyed him, his spirit, and his finances. Sometimes, love means being the villain in someone's story until they're clear-eyed enough to see the truth. "Damn, you're tougher than you look." I almost laughed. "Mr. Rivera, I raised a son, buried a husband, and survived 67 years in America. I'm far stronger than I appear." The wedding was set for 2 p.m., with the reception immediately after in Rosewood Estates' Grand Hall. I had every detail timed. Mark would arrive by 1:30 and wait in his car until I sent the message. I would slip in through the garden entrance and take my place where I could watch the ceremony unfold. By 11, my phone buzzed nonstop. The florist, the caterer, the coordinator all frantic, demanding payment from the bride's family. I let every call roll to voicemail, a satisfied smile tugging at my lips. At noon, Daniel called. I braced myself before answering. "Mom, something weird is... All the vendors are calling Jessica about payments, but she swears she never told them her family would pay." "Oh dear, that does sound messy. What did Jessica say?" I feigned innocence. "She's furious. Thinks someone's trying to sabotage the wedding." "Mom, you wouldn't, would you?" "Daniel, are you suggesting I'd ruin your wedding?" I let my voice catch, trembling. "After everything I've done to make this day perfect?" "No, I'm sorry. It's just Jessica's so stressed, she needs someone to blame." I softened my tone. Don't worry, sweetheart. I'm sure it's just a mix-up. What matters is that today you marry the one you love. At 1 o'clock, I picked up my purse, my car keys, my phone. I looked one last time at the photo of Daniel at age 5, smiling, toothless and innocent, believing his mother could fix anything. And today, I was about to fix the biggest thing of all. The drive to Rosewood Estate took 15 minutes through downtown Dallas. The rain-drenched trees lining the streets seemed to weep for what was about to unfold. I parked 2 blocks away, slipped in through the back near the catering kitchen. Just as I expected, chaos everywhere. Vendors demanding payment, the coordinator dashing around, servers rushing to set tables. No one noticed a woman in a black dress slipping by. I followed the hallway until I reached the chapel. The scene was breathtaking. 2,000 imported white roses arching over the aisle, candles glowing in silver stands, silk draped from the ceiling like waterfalls, all of it paid for by me, for a fraud. Guests began arriving, filling the pews, chatting brightly. I spotted Daniel's friends, his colleagues, distant relatives, all innocent, about to witness the scandal of the century. I tucked myself behind a marble column, hidden yet with a clear view. My phone buzzed Mark's message. He was parked a block away, ready. At 2 to 10, the music, and swelled. Daniel stepped out, polished in his tuxedo, his face glowing. My chest tightened. In a few minutes, that smile would vanish, replaced by the sting of betrayal. But better that than letting Sophia destroy him forever. At 2:15, the chapel doors opened. Guests rose to their feet. Sophia, still pretending to be Jessica, walked in wearing a $12,000 Vera Wang gown, holding a bouquet of white roses, my grandmother's pearls gleaming around her neck. Her radiant smile and tear-brimmed eyes looked like pure emotion, but I knew it was all an act. I sent Mark one word. Now. The next seconds felt like slow motion. The doors burst open again, echoing through the chapel. Every head turned. Mark Rivera strode in, looking like an avenging angel in a wrinkled suit from the road. His eyes locked on Sophia. The bouquet slipped from her hands, hitting the marble floor with a crack that rang in the silence. "Sophia Collins," Mark thundered, his voice bouncing off the stone walls. "Did you really think you could hide forever?" Gasps rippled through the room. Daniel rushed forward, shielding his bride-to-be, confusion etched across his face. "You're mistaken. She's Jessica." Mark let out a hard, joyless laugh. "That's the name she's using now." He pulled a folder from his jacket. "Her real name is Sophia, a professional con artist. I was her partner until she stole $15,000 from me." "That's a lie!" Sophia's voice cracked into a desperate shriek. "Daniel, I don't know this man. He's insane." But I saw her trembling hands, the sweet voice shattered. The mask was falling. Mark flipped open the folder, holding up photographs. "Here's Sophia at the Ritz-Carlton in Miami, scamming tourists with stolen credit cards. Here she is in Phoenix, faking cancer to steal church donations. And this one, my favorite. Sophia leaving a hotel in San Diego with my wallet, my watch, and the engagement ring I was foolish enough to give her." Daniel's face went pale as wax. "Jessica, what is this? He's lying." Sophia's voice broke. "Daniel, you know me. We're about to be married. I love you." "She doesn't even know what love is," Mark snapped. "Want to hear what she really thinks of your precious Daniel?" He held up his phone. I recorded it. "Want to hear what she called him?" "The old lady's fool." Gasps filled the air, whispers rising like a tide. I stayed behind the column, watching my son's world collapse. My heart clenched, but Sophia wasn't done. She was too skilled to give up so easily. People can change. She forced her voice back into sweetness. I'm not who I used to be. Daniel, you believe in second chances, don't you? A calculated move, preying on his kindness, pushing him to choose between redemption and betrayal. But I had prepared Mark with another blow. Second chances? He laughed coldly. Tell him about the other fool you've been milking, Sophia. Daniel's eyes narrowed. Jessica, what's he talking about? I don't know. Her answer came too fast, too defensive. Mark scrolled on his phone. Let me jog your memory. 3 weeks ago you called, bragging about a lonely old woman who gave you $40,000. Sound familiar? The silence was crushing. Every eye locked on Sophia, waiting. I watched Daniel's face shift as truth dawned, and I gripped the column to steady myself. That, Sophia's voice broke. That was taken out of context. Out of context? Daniel's voice was barely a whisper. You called my mother a lonely old woman? Daniel, no, I didn't mean. Her control slipped. Panic warped her words. This man is trying to tell the truth. Daniel cut in, his voice rising, anger pushing out the confusion. My mother gave us everything. She drained her savings, even borrowed against her house, just to give you the wedding you wanted. The chapel went deathly still, every guest hanging on each word. I saw phones raised, some of Daniel's colleagues even live-streaming the disaster. Mark wasn't finished. 2 years of rage now had the perfect audience. Want to hear the best part? He sneered, glancing at Daniel and the stunned crowd. She planned to drain your bank account and disappear after 6 months. That's her playbook, long enough to secure spousal rights, short enough to dodge emotional ties. Stop, Sophia begged. Tears streamed down her face, smearing the flawless makeup. But real or not, I couldn't tell. Daniel staggered back, his expression curdling into disgust and betrayal. Is it true, Sophia? She glanced wildly around, cornered like prey. The chapel doors were blocked by curious guests. The altar offered no refuge. Finally, her eyes swept the crowd and landed on me. Just one heartbeat of recognition, then pure hatred. You, she screamed, pointing straight at me. This is all your fault. The entire chapel turned. Suddenly, I was the center of attention in a way I had never planned. Mom? Daniel's shock was audible. What are you doing here? You said you were going to New Orleans. I stepped out from behind the column, calmly adjusting my pearls. I lied, sweetheart. I learned from the best. Did you orchestrate all of this? His voice quivered between horror and awe. I revealed the truth, I corrected. There's a difference. Sophia spun her story again, desperate. She's jealous, Daniel, she shrieked, pointing at me. Your mother couldn't stand that you chose me over her. She hired this man to wreck the wedding so she could control you forever. It was a clever last attempt, leaning on the cliché of the controlling mother-in-law. I saw hesitation flicker in Daniel's eyes. 29 years of Sophia's practiced deceit against 67 years of my love and sacrifice. Who would? My son believe? Mark delivered the final strike. Mrs. Harris didn't hire me. I came on my own. He held up his phone. Want to hear the recording from 3 weeks ago? The one where she laughed about scamming lonely old women and their trusting sons? He pressed play. The audio was fuzzy, but Sophia's voice rang clear. That old hag is so desperate for a daughter-in-law she'll believe anything. And the son? He's just his mommy's fool. All I have to do is cry about my tragic past, and he signs another check. Daniel's face shifted from ghostly white to furious red, then ashen gray. I ached to hold him, but he had to see this for himself. Then Sophia's voice again. She even gave me her grandmother's pearls, called them a family heirloom. Maybe I'll sell them after the honeymoon. Instinctively, Daniel's eyes shot to Sophia's neck, where my grandmother's pearls glittered. 4 generations of women had worn them, a symbol of love and legacy. Sophia clutched at them, as if she could hide the evidence. "Daniel, I can explain." "Explain what?" His voice cut like ice. "Explain why you mocked my mother while spending her money? Explain why you called me her fool while pretending to love me? Explain how you plan to take everything and run?" Sophia's strength drained away. Her shoulders sagged. For the first time, she looked her age instead of the innocent mask she wore. "It was just a job at first," she whispered. "Just another mark. But then, I don't know. I thought maybe I could make it real, even if it all started as a lie." Daniel's voice cracked. "Your name, your job, your family, your whole life, was anything between us real?" Sophia glanced around the chapel, hundreds of eyes fixed on her with shock, contempt, curiosity. Flowers still gleamed, cameras still clicked, video still rolled, capturing every humiliating second. "I have to go," she whispered. "You're right." Daniel's voice was steel. "You do." But she wasn't done. Straightening her gown, she turned back, her eyes blazing at me. "You think you've won?" "No. Congratulations, Mrs. Harris. You got your precious son back. But here's the truth: you've ruined him. He'll never trust another woman again. You've destroyed his faith in love just so you could be the only woman in his life." The words pierced deep, planting a seed of doubt. Had my pursuit of justice crossed into selfishness? But Daniel stunned me. "No," he said firmly. "You didn't ruin me. She did. The difference is, my mother was trying to protect me. You were trying to destroy me." Sophia's face twisted with fury. "You'll regret this. Both of you. I have friends, connections. This isn't over." Mark stepped forward, lips curling in a half-smile. "Actually, it is. While you were putting on your show, I spoke with a few friends at the FBI. They're very interested in your fake Social Security numbers and fraudulent work records." Sophia's face drained of color. "You wouldn't dare." "Already did, sweetheart. They'll be here any minute." He glanced at his watch. "Honestly, I'm surprised they're not here yet." Right on cue, 2 men in dark suits walked into the chapel with the steady stride of federal agents. The last flicker of hope died in Sophia's eyes. "Sophia Collins," one announced, flashing his badge. "FBI. You are under arrest for fraud, identity theft, and violations of federal banking law." The sight that followed was something I never imagined at my son's wedding. Agents reading Miranda rights in a chapel filled with white roses, guests frantically recording with their phones, a bride in a $12,000 gown, handcuffed. Sophia didn't go quietly. As they dragged her out, she shrieked over her shoulder, "This is oppression. I didn't do anything wrong. You'll hear from my lawyer." But no one cared. Half the chapel filmed, the other half texted updates to friends and family. As the agents led Sophia away, a strange hush settled. 300 guests sat frozen, unsure whether to stay or leave, to celebrate or mourn. Even the pastor looked utterly lost. Daniel stood rooted in his tuxedo, staring at the doors where his bride had just been taken away. I longed to go to him, but held back. He needed space to feel, to grieve, to decide his next step. Finally, he turned to the crowd. "Well," his voice carried across the chapel, "that was strange." Nervous laughter broke out. "Thank you all for coming. I know nobody planned on spending their Saturday afternoon like this." He ran a hand through his hair. "The wedding is obviously off, but the reception's already paid for. If anyone wants to stay for dinner and drinks, please do. God knows I could use one." This time, real laughter rippled. Guests rose, stretching, murmuring, easing back into reality. At last, Daniel's eyes found mine. Across the chaos, our gazes locked. Gratitude, shame, and a flicker of respect mingled there. He walked down the aisle toward me, the crowd parting like the Red Sea. When he reached me, he paused, studying my face as if reading every line. "Mom," Daniel finally said, "we need to talk." I nodded. "Yes, we do. But first," I reached out, carefully unclasping my grandmother's pearls from Sophia's neck before they took her away. "These belong to our family." I held the pearls tight in my trembling hand, feeling their familiar weight. In fact, they belong to the woman my son will marry when he finds someone worthy of them. Tears filled Daniel's eyes. "I'm sorry, Mom, for not believing you, for choosing her over you, for being such a fool." "You're not a fool, sweetheart. You just loved, or at least loved, the image of who you thought she was." I reached up and straightened his tie, the same gesture I'd done since he was a little boy. "Love always makes us vulnerable. What matters is that you're safe. When did you know?" he asked. "I started to suspect about a month ago. I had proof 2 weeks back. I hired a private investigator. And Mark, he volunteered to help once I called and told him where to find her." I gave a small smile. "Turns out nothing burns hotter than a scammer betrayed." Daniel chuckled, even in that moment. "You've been busy, huh?" "I've had a very educational few weeks." I squeezed his hand. "Now, what do you say we go out there and face everyone at this not a wedding reception? They'll have questions." As we walked out together, I caught fragments of conversation. Shock still lingered, but mingled with it was genuine concern for Daniel and, surprisingly, a touch of respect for what they called my detective work. Mrs. Wilson, our neighbor for 30 years, grabbed my hand as I passed. "Susan, you're sharp as a tack. I never trusted that girl. Too pretty, too sweet. Real women need a few edges." The reception, no longer a wedding, turned into the most honest gathering I had ever attended. Without the pretense of matrimony, people relaxed in a way they rarely do at formal events. The bar opened early, the band played blues instead of wedding standards, and conversations flowed with the raw honesty that only comes after shared shock. Daniel carried himself with more grace than I expected. He moved through the room, thanking guests, apologizing for the drama, accepting sympathy with a quiet smile. I watched from across the hall, proud not of his career or his choices in love, but of the character he showed under pressure. Mark found me by the dessert table, where I was debating whether it was appropriate to eat wedding cake when there had been no wedding. He held out his hand. "Thank you for giving me the chance to finally face Sophia after all these years." I shook his hand. "No, I'm the one who should thank you. Without you, I could never have exposed her. What you did took courage." Mark smiled. "No, Mrs. Harris. Most mothers would have tried to talk their sons out of it and failed. You were playing chess while the rest of us were playing checkers." When he left, I finally had a moment to myself. The adrenaline drained, leaving only exhaustion and a trace of sadness. I had saved Daniel from a disastrous marriage and financial ruin, but I had also shattered his faith in love, at least for now. Still, I knew I had done the right thing. Daniel returned, carrying 2 glasses of champagne. "You look like you're thinking hard." I took the glass, grateful. Just wondering if there could have been a gentler way. You mean sitting me down and telling me my fiancé was a con artist? You know exactly how I would have reacted. He was right. I would have been dismissed as jealous, controlling. Daniel took a sip. You know what changed my mind? It wasn't Mark showing up, and it wasn't even the recording. It was the moment Sophia realized you had beaten her. For just a split second, her mask fell, and I saw exactly who she really was. What did you see? Cold calculation and a flicker of respect for a worthy opponent. She underestimated you. Thought you were just a lonely old lady who'd do anything to keep her son happy. She had no idea she was dealing with someone smarter. I'm not sure about smarter. Maybe just more determined. Daniel squeezed my hand. Mom, none of what Sophia did was your fault. She's a professional liar. She studied you, figured out what you wanted to hear, and became exactly that. You weren't naive, you were a target. He looked me in the eyes. Thank you for seeing through her, for protecting me, and for doing it in a way that left me no choice but to face the truth. You're welcome. But next time you fall in love, maybe introduce her to me a little earlier. He laughed. Next time, I'm running a full background check first. That's a bit much. Not after today. He smiled. Besides, I learned something important about the women in my life. What's that? Never underestimate an American mother. We're a lot more dangerous than we look. I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in months. Your grandmother would be proud. She would have loved seeing this. Daniel raised his glass. A toast to justice, served cold with a side of public humiliation. I clinked my glass against his. A toast to family, and to knowing when to fight for the people you love. Looking back on it all, I realized love can blind us, but family, when built on honesty and trust, remains the one anchor that never drifts away. I didn't regret stepping up to protect my son, because sometimes love means being the villain in someone's story until they're ready to see the truth. My grandmother's pearls will one day be passed down to the next generation, but the lesson Daniel learned today matters far more than any heirloom. Truth is priceless, and real love never needs lies to survive. And what about you? If you were in my shoes, would you have dared to expose the truth in front of hundreds of people to save someone you love? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments. And if you want to walk with me through more family stories filled with trials, hard choices, and unforgettable lessons, stay close. Because sometimes it's in these very stories that we truly learn to cherish love, trust, and the strength of family.